about the different concepts in the modern post-independence India, like we were discussed about the political agency, rights and citizenship. Now I would like to, before I explain about the citizenship, I would like to explain about the participation and governance. Participation and governance is very well part of the earlier discourses also, but in the 1980s, there is in the international agency like World Bank and IMF, they imposed the new concepts called governance. Governance is how you govern the entire process of the government. In that governance, most of the countries in 1980s, they have faced the balance of payment crisis. Due to the balance of payment crisis, World Bank imposed certain conditionalities on these developing countries by redefining the entire government process and introduced the concepts called governance. As part of the governance, they insist on the participation, representation and the concepts like good governance and providing the women in the equal number of participation in the governance process, and the governance should be pro-poor, pro-women, it should be pro-environment. It has introduced all the concepts. So participation and representations, even though it was there from the beginning, it got prominence after 1980s. Participation basically about the, during that period, another two concepts became so prominent, that is the decentralization and democratization. So because of the international agencies like World Bank, most of the government, they have introduced the concepts called decentralization. Like an Indian government also, they brought the new legislation, that is 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. They have brought, according to this constitutional amendment act, they have established, apart from state and the central governments, they have established the new government at the local level, and there is like municipalities, corporations and gram panchayats. So they have a separate structures at the local level for urban and rural local bodies. Not only establishing the separate structure, they have given the certain reservations for the women and marginalized to make them effectively participate and represent in the governance process. So participation is the mostly talk about whether you are becoming part of the government or a part of the governance process. Representation is much more like that. In the liberal democratic theory, representation is someone will represent on behalf of the citizens, and they will talk about the problems of the constituencies, and they represent at the parliament and state assemblies, even at the local level also. In gram panchayat and municipalities, they elect certain person as a representative to talk about their problems of the constituency, talk about their own problem, and also how to develop their particular constituency. So all these concepts, political agencies, rights, participation and representation, it is part of the citizenship. Now I will ask,
just add on to what Dr. G. Uma said, that it's been very interesting to revisit the question of citizenship. Now, if you look at that, women have been given constitutionally their fundamental rights, fundamental duties, but then in addition to that, the constitution does provide us equal rights, but there's a substantive rights also, which is actually given by constitution to us. What does it mean, substantive rights? Let's go back for a few seconds and reflect upon that. For instance, that if you remember that recently that women were denied to enter into Dargah, Haji Ali, women were also denied to enter into Shani Shingnapur temple. These are the two examples which I'm citing, because even though having the equal fundamental rights to enter into any worship which is under the domains of right, women were still denied. So we have to rush to the Supreme Court and claim our rights. So in the substantial rights, that there's certain rights are given. For instance, the maternity leave is given. For instance, that there's a special care given to the woman. So in that way, you can relate that the constitution has provided certain rights. Like for instance, in organized sector, the certain rights are given to the woman, that for instance, the right to take a leave, which comes under, in the organized sector, which is given by the state. So you could see that the citizenship discourse again is not something a stagnant category. Even the rights are given, but we have to keep claiming these rights, and you can easily relate in the political processes this debate. For instance, that somebody who are refugees or who might be a migrant labor, and the new liberal economic policy, the way in which it functions and works. So many times that many women, and you can see in everyday life, women keep moving, shifting in terms of the agriculture crisis, the agrarian crisis, which actually lead them from rural area to move on to the urban areas, and where they locate themselves. For instance, the domestic women's right, which is again claimed by the rights. So legal discourse is always engaged with the rights of women. So where women keep claiming that we are also a equal citizenship. We are also equal citizen of this country, and we should not be treated with a secondary citizen. Now I would ask Dr. G. Uma to talk about the representation of women in the parliament.
Before I get into the representation of women in the parliament, as I have already mentioned, I would like to give more on the constitutional provisions. As we were talking about, in front of the constitutions, Article 14 guarantees all are equal before the law. And also with regard to representation for citizenship, Article 14, 15, 16 and 19 of the Constitution of India and the Representation of People's Act provides for equal participation of women in the political process. Article 21 is about protection of life and personal liberty. Right to live here is to understood as a life with a dignity and not merely existing like an animal. So Article 23 about the right against exploitation. Like that, Indian Constitution, it has provided lots of provisions with regard to equal citizenship for both men and women. So like constitution has guaranteed equal for each and every citizens, but women, are they getting the equal representation? Are they getting the are they able to participate equally like men in the political process? When we ask this question, we can easily say that it is not. Like not only constitutional provisions, there is a legislation, policies and program also. It has given equal place for both men and women. For example, in the beginning, immediately after we got into independence, like the women, they considered as a mere welfare beneficiaries. So the government provides certain welfare measures for the women. This idea has changed from welfare to development from 1975 onwards. In the 6th 5-year plan, the government has prepared the separate chapter for the women's development. And also not only at the Indian government level, there are lots of measure has taken at the international level also, like a legislation, policies and programs. The government has prepared the national policy for empowerment of women. So there are policies, programs and the legislations to make the women to participate equally like a men in the political process. But we need to ask whether is it happening? Will they able to not only as a voter, will they able to contest freely in the elections and participate in the political process? Will they able to freely debate on the issues of the politics in a public space? Immediately we can say that no. So electoral system, and before we get into women issues, little bit we would like to explain about the electoral system and political parties. Like anybody, electoral law system and process has established in the country, like who can vote? Anybody can attain at the age of 18 and above, they can easily vote. With regard to standing in the elections, if the Indian citizens, if they attain the age of 25, they can again contest for the Lok Sabha elections. If they want to contest in the Rajya Sabha elections, they have to reach at the age of 30. With regard to reservation of seats, there is no reservation of seats for the women in the parliament and state assemblies, so there is no reservations. Even though we have a established structure and constitutionally guaranteed structure for conducting the elections, free and fair elections, there is still lots of drawbacks in the Indian electoral system. This election was conducted by the Election Commission of India, that is the highest constitutional authority, and it can control, give directions and prepare the electoral rules for conducting the parliament and state assemblies. It is a 3-member body. With regard to conducting the elections for the local bodies, there is a separate election commission established at the state level. Okay, with regard to, before we get into the issues of women in the political process, just we would like to give certain data. For example, for overall throughout the world, Rwanda has a highest number of representation in the parliament, that is the lower house. It has a 61.3% of the women represent in the lower house. Apart from Rwanda, if you see the Cuba, they have a 53.2% of the women represent in the lower house in the parliament. But if you look at India's position, it has only 11.8% of the women represent in the Indian parliament according to the 2014 elections, and even our upper house only 11.9%. We can compare the Indian position with the South Asian context also. In the South Asian countries, Nepal has the highest number of women representatives at the lower house. It has 32.7% of the women represent in the lower house. Apart from Nepal, Afghanistan, it has a 27.7% of the women represent in the lower house. Then even Pakistan and Bangladesh, they have a more than 20% of the women represent in the lower house. But there also, in South Asian context also, women's representation in the parliament is very low. Like India has only 11.8%. Like Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Maldives, they have a lowest number of women's representation in the parliament. Only 5.9% of the women and 5.8% of the women they represent in the lower house. So far we talked about the women's low representation and we have given certain data also. Now we need to really see what is the real reason for the women's low representation in the parliament and state assemblies with regard to India.
I would just like to go back to Dr. Uma with the Women's Reservation Bill issue here. We have been more than 2 decades actually trying to put into this debate, and the women's movement has done immense contribution to this. What we see that from 1986 till now, that women's reservation bill is not yet passed. Now there is an ongoing debate, and I want to urge my students that they should look at this debate called From Litigation to Legislation, most recent publication by Professor Zoya Hassan, in which that one of the third chapter goes and arguing that how much immense contribution the civil society and the women's movement did. And time and again there was a debate. If you look at from 1986 to onwards, the very interesting actually analysis has been done by the Sharin Rai's work, Nivedita Menas and Vidhu Verma, Professor Zoya Hassan. These are the few number of scholars, including these scholars. They do argue that there should be a reservation for women, initially 33% in the parliament. There's a whole debate, constantly which is going on in the parliament at both levels, that do we really need the reservation for women? And then this debate was back and forth, is actually contested by many of the male members in the picture, which is they're existing in the parliament. The arguments also given by many of the parliamentarians is that there should be quota within quota for the women. For instance, how can a Muslim woman will represent? How can a Dalit woman will represent? So these are the few debates which are very important, and the significant departure whether how do we take forward this further debate and try to bring out the implementation of this women's reservation bill.
I want to explain more why do we really need the reservation. Basic thing that parliament and state assemblies, it's an important institution to make a legislations. When you make a legislations, you need to have a representative. If you have a representative, then whatever the particular groups or constituents needs will be reflected in the particular law or legislations. If there are less number of women really represent, then how can their women's needs, concerns, how can we expect their needs and concerns reflect in the legislations, policies and programs? That is the important argument at the international level people are talking about. For example, there is an already we have given the data in Western European countries and Nordic countries, they have more than 30% of the women they represent the parliament. So once the women's representation has increased in the parliament, then automatically they found that whatever the legislations they come up, it has reflected the women's concerns, their expectations, and how to treat both men and women equally in the society. All those things it will reflect in the legislations. That is the first argument they have given. Now if you see that very less number of women, like around 11%, 11 to 12% they represent, but like these 11 to 12% of the women, where they come from? Are they backing the certain political parties, or are these women, are they coming from the already established the political families? So there is a second argument given by the feminists, that even though if we talk about the women's increasing women's representation in the parliament and state assemblies, we need to ensure that there should be feminist conscious women. They have to represent on behalf of women. Then only whatever the legislations these institutions making, it reflect the women's concerns, and the legislation also more from a feminist perspective. So like if you look at the structures of the society, like a family and also institution, mostly it is the patriarchal structure in the Indian society. So these patriarchal people who represent these patriarchal structures, it reflects their attitude will be reflect in the legislation and policies also, and that is the first issue we need to discuss. Second one is that women, they made to believe that politics is the masculine structure, so it is not for the women, it is only for men can occupy that position. The women, they have to very well, they have to be either take a certain feminine positions, like they have to be teacher, that to primary school teachers, or like certain feminine positions like caring and nurturing activities they have to do. That the women, they are made to believe that the politics is a masculine structure. And also third one is that when you look at the literacy among women from the beginning, immediately after independence, compared to male members, women literacy is low. So literacy is the very important factor to enter into the public space. We can compare this after the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. Many women, they occupy the decision making positions, but due to the lack of literacy, due to the lack of experience, and they are not able to perform as expected by the society. So society expected more from the women, but these are the impediments for the women not able to perform that. And also, like if the women, they want to enter into the politics also, the families never supports. And also if you could see that electoral politics is always very inhospitable to the women. And third one is that in a politics, the important thing is that we have to make alliances, and women having very less alliances, and also they have a very less networking capacity. That is the another important issue we need to talk about. And also if you take parliament or state assembly as an institutions, it is more than an institution. The masculine politics, certain characteristics of masculinities, that will dominate in the institutions rather than the institutional politics. Like for example, implementing certain corrupt practices to win in the electoral politics, and using the money power to win in the politics. All these areas the women are not aware, and it is not possible for them to enter into these areas. And also that is the, and women, they lack moral and financial support. When you, any women, if they want to enter into the politics, certainly they need a sound financial support. And the parties, they may or may not support. Most of the political parties, they support only winnable candidates. If they feel that the women, they are not able to win in the electoral politics, certainly they don't support. And also, most another important thing is, if you think about the Indian context is based on the party politics. And the women, even if they get elected also, they have to listen what party says. They are not independently, it is not possible for them to take decisions. For example, even if they want to agitate on behalf of women, or if you want to take up certain issues, and all the women, if they want to come together, agitate, but it is, if the party controls, they don't participate. That is the another important thing. Women's organizations affiliated to various political parties, they take up the women issues and agitate on behalf of them, instead allowing women to participate and do the party politics. That is the apart from major political issues. And if you take up the women issues in elections, and even if you analyze the manifestos, many feminists, they have analyzed the manifestos of the political parties, there is a very less issues appear in the manifestos of the women. Even most of the women, they go and vote without realizing that whether that particular political parties, they support women issues. Are they going to take up any women issues if they win in the elections? Most of the women, they never realize before voting that. And also, for example, in 2014 elections, most of the political parties, they have promised to pass the women reservation bill in the parliament. So except one or few regional political parties, most of overwhelmingly women, they voted for that political party. But after they assume the power, still that women reservation bill is pending with the Lok Sabha, and it has passed in the Rajya Sabha. I don't know whether this women reservation bill for giving reservation to the women in the parliament and state assemblies will get passed soon or not. And with whether we need to debate whether this, even if they pass the women reservation bill, is it a tool for enhancing women's participation? That is the one important issue. Even though our constitution has given given equality for every citizen, we need to conclude that reservation is needed to compensate the social barriers, because no, if you don't take any affirmative action, it is not possible for the women to get into politics. So we need to take an affirmative action. That is what we are discussing the past 1 hour, and insisting that the efforts at the national level, as well as the what these political thinkers and feminists, they are trying to mainstream the women and political process.
Thank you.